Now, everyday crime-fighting cops and the feds, they have access to tens of millions of records that track vehicle movement, and among that, of course, I'm talking about driving your car. License plate tracking devices, they're set up in, among other places, Monroe, Erie, Onondaga, Albany, Broome, Westchester, Suffolk, Nassau counties. That's just in New York. Lisa Salvati reports on why one civil rights attorney says the practice is not unconstitutional.
License plate cameras are being used by police in New York as crime-fighting tools. Westchester, Nassau, and Suffolk are among several counties throughout the state that use them. The cameras are either mounted at fixed locations or on police cars, as seen in this demonstration video of a plainclothes detective using one. Police say they can help track stolen cars as well as witnesses for criminal investigations. The cameras record the time and place of the car and stores the data in a computer server that can be accessed by police agencies across the state. The storing of the information has recently come under fire by the New York Civil Liberties Union, saying that most of the records are not of criminals, but of law-abiding citizens going about their everyday business, and that's an invasion of privacy. But civil rights and constitutional law attorney Michael Sussman counters, saying people don't have a reasonable expectation of privacy when in a public place.
The government, Big Brother, if you will, is essentially allowed to take your photograph and for whatever security purposes they may see fit. Now people say, well, I'm not doing anything wrong. I get that, and I'm not saying they are doing anything wrong. The question is, do they have a reasonable expectation of privacy where they're doing something right? And the answer to that is they don't.
Sussman believes even as technology continues to change, no restrictions will be put on the storage of the data resulting from case law, as that's not the court's job.
So if you're going to go to a court, the court's going to likely say to you, why are you asking me to legislate? That's a matter for the legislature. And I think they'd be right.
Our calls to the New York Civil Liberties Union to see if they'd be in favor of a new law on restricting the license plate readers were not returned. For Richard French Live, I'm Lisa Salvati.
All right, Lisa, thank you. Here's where I disagree with Michael, who's a friend to the program, and I respect him. There's one thing if I'm going into a mall and I'm looking around. Okay, I know there's going to be security cameras and everything else, and I hope they're not going to take my likeness and what stores I go in and share that, but that's a debate for another time. What choice do I have as a motorist but to use public roads? Why don't I have a reasonable expectation to say, if I'm stopping at the red light, if I'm stopping at the stop sign, if I'm following the rules of the road, you don't have a right to track not only all my whereabouts, but then to amass all that data to create a profile of me. It's presumptive that, that I can just hop in a helicopter. I don't have to use my car to get around. This is where I have trouble with this public space. I guess as soon as I walk out the door, I got no more rights anymore.
It may be offensive, Rich, but it doesn't mean it's illegal. You know, years ago, we all have those cases where when there was a mafia funeral, the feds used to, be up in trees and up in apartments, and they used to take down license plates, and they used to take photographs. And then, I'd do the trial 12 years later, and there would be the photograph of my client. Look, we've done this how many times with technology?
You're right, but in that particular case, I would get your argument about it, but at least that was born out of what was an investigation. I'm going to the A&P, and then I'm going to an ATM. I'm not a subject of an investigation. I haven't done anything wrong. Forget about the presumption of innocence. There is no reasonable case that law enforcement should be looking at.
You're right, and the answer is simply this. You do not have an expectation of privacy for that which you put out in public view. The bigger issue is, why are they wasting our tax dollars?
Yeah, well, that's a different one. But
why are they wasting our tax dollars doing that?
That if I walk out the door, I lose my expectation of privacy?
You see, whether the law and the case law bears it out, I tend to agree with you. I think it's a core principle in this country that we have a right to not have the government intrude on us and collect information about us. Whether the case law bears it out, and Jim is probably right, but I think that this needs to be looked at. I think this is a violation of what our expectations as citizens.
You've done information gathering, I'm sure, when you were at the DA's office. Has it just from a basic standpoint changed in 20 years what you would have ever imagined that you could gather on people?
Now we have the ability to do things. We don't question whether we should do them anymore. So what really has happened is it's just one more effort to chip away at all privacy. And I disagree.
technology.
With technology. And I disagree with Mike when he says that, you give that up when you go outside. Sure, you can take a picture of my license plate, and if I'm at a funeral, you can come there and take a picture of me at the funeral. But you can't then use that in the past to determine where I'm going shopping, whether I took a vacation, who I'm going to visit. Now what you can do is you can sit there and take this image of the, or not image, you actually track the car through the license plate, and it's much more than you just taking that one photograph. So if you were going to try to piece together a case, you would have to actually follow that person and investigate the case.
I don't want to be like the sci-fi guy here, but it used to be, whether we understood or not, you go and get Easy Pass. If they want to, they can obviously figure out, and I'm a pretty smart guy, I knew this when I signed up for it, that they're going to be able to figure out where I went, especially if I went through any tolls and everything else. I also know there's a chip in my car, in newly made cars right now, that they're going to be able to basically track it. What's my choice? I'm going to go jogging everywhere? I signed up for it. But with drones, you go to a beach, for crying out loud, they can basically map out wherever you are at any time, and this is America. Like, again, I'm not, got my anarchy sign going out here. I'm just saying, where? I know we've had this conversation before, but the idea that the cops can track my license plate wherever I go, and I'm doing nothing wrong, I'm not the subject of an investigation, and they can do whatever they want with this, Jimmy, that is scary as technology gets bigger and better.
It's scary, it's offensive, and the reality of it is that courts are having problems with it.
What's the point of a warrant anymore? Why do you need warrants?
There is no point. With the GPS case, the Supreme Court couldn't come out and say what Doug said properly. It's just offensive. They went back to the 1700s and used trespass law. Because I have to touch you to put the GPS on your car, even though I'm tracking what I could easily track with my eyes, they struck it down. Here, they're not touching anything, and so that's going to be your problem. And you're absolutely right. It is either going to be struck down because it's fundamentally offensive, or they're going to go through this very strict interpretation of the law.
But words I remembered in 1L called probable cause and stuff like warrants, you don't really need them anymore. I mean, you do, but you don't really need them anymore before the investigation starts.
But I don't need probable cause to look at you outside. I need probable cause to search you. I need probable cause to come into your house.
And but aren't you searching me in a different way if you're creating a digital, not just footprint, but a digital map of my life?
But it's even more than that, because what you're doing is essentially you're following a vehicle. The vehicle's not the individual. You don't know who's driving that vehicle. So someone else, if you let a friend drive the vehicle, now you're attributable for everywhere the vehicle went.
Except with red light cams, if you're stopped at the light, you can probably make out the driver.
I have a real issue with, well, it may be, but the other bigger issue is that if you can't make out the driver, the owner of the vehicle still gets the ticket.
Well, that's the thing. The owner of the vehicle gets the ticket, but you get no points on your license because they can't.
But you pay that
I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal. This is getting nuts, everybody, and we haven't even had a debate in this country about it. This is just move right ahead here, and we're going to turn around and say, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for that. And don't come to me crying that, oh, we should have had a conversation. I've been banging the drum for this forever now, and nobody really seems, frankly, to care. Because everybody wants their iPhone, everybody wants their Easy Pass, nobody's going to complain what's in their car, but we're going down the line here where I don't think here we really fully grasp just how much we're ceding in the way of personal liberty. And that's my editorial for the night. Okay, coming up next, though, former NFL players are facing off in a class action concussion settlement. They're not only at war with the league, but they're actually fighting between each other. Even former teammates, good friends, are not on the same page when it comes to a settlement. It brings up a much broader issue. I want to bring in our legal panel about how to decide when to settle here, especially when you have competing interests.